Hey, you're with TheEZGZ. Real quick here, want to give you guys an update on the 1800 motor that we built and took to Oregon. And recently I swapped carburetors. I took the Dellortos off because I had problems with them, and I wanted to switch, get away from the Dellortos and go with the Cadrons. I'm trying to use things that I already have. These are used reconditioned Cadrons that I reconditioned myself. I bought new throttle bodies, this little section right here, and put a kit in them, and I put it in the Baja, and I took the heater boxes off, and it seemed to run just fine, and my mileage improved over running the single IDF Weber, the center mount setup, and it ran fine. I had no complaints with it, and that's why I put it back together. Didn't really take it apart. I changed to the aluminum push rods, thinking that that would give me a little snappier response, taking weight off the valve train. I put the 1.5" full header system where they're equal length tubes. It's not the best collector, but it is minimal restriction here with even with this type of a glass pack baffle, which isn't recommended, but it's probably better than what I had. So put it on and it ran horrible. So I thought, what am I going to do? What's the problem? I did have to purchase an electric fuel pump for the dune buggy because all my other engines have fuel pumps. The Baja runs an electric pump, so I have the option of using it or not. But in this one, I had to add it. So I did add a pump, and you have to put it where it's gravity feed to the suction side of the pump. I have a gas tank here, and I have a stock one in the front. And then I have a separate device to switch tanks electrically from inside the car. But that means I have all this extra fuel line, and having all this fuel line is like storage for pressure and volume of fuel. And this pump puts out 1 to 4 pounds, and a viewer told me that I should be running 2 pounds, 1 3/4 to 2 1/4 pounds on the Cadron. So they're a little over pressurized, and I thought, well, maybe that's why it's not running right. It's getting past, it's dribbling into the carburetors, and it's like every time I turn around I got to spend more money, and I want to use the stuff that I had. And today I thought I'd take one more look at the Dellorto carburetors and see if I could find the drip, which carburetor had the drip, and what was causing it, because I was pretty much settled that they're done. I'm not going to pay somebody $100 in some other state, pay freight to have somebody do it, and then there's no guarantee that it's going to stay away. So what I did, hooked up my fuel line direct, turned on the car, had the 1 to 4 pounds, shined the camera down the throat, and I found one carburetor out of the 4 that had the constant dribble at 4 psi. That is an example of the Dellorto drip. I knew one of these carburetors had it. I thought it was the other side. Normally ran these carbs at 3 psi. So the start was, okay, find out why that carburetor is. So I took it apart. The carburetor's over here in the vise. I took the top off the carburetor, which is now right here, and I took just this assembly and I hooked the fuel line down here, and I turned on the fuel pump, and I raised and lowered the float to the proper shut-off level, and it shut off. There's the top 1/8 of an inch is really spring-loaded, and so it wasn't overriding that little spring. It was shutting completely off. So I took a look at it over here to find out where my fuel level was, and when I took the floats out, the fuel level looked okay. When you remove the float level, and I've had it in and out of here, so this little shelf area to the right inside the float, the shiny aluminum part there, that's the side with the hinges, and usually your float level should be right close to the top of that. Now here it's down, and if you look down these jet stack holes, I don't know if you can see down there, you can see the fuel down there. That's where the emulsion tube and the main jet stack is, and that's where the fuel is coming up and coming over here to this main, and it was dripping on through, and it was washing off the oil on my cylinders on this side, and that's why it started to smoke when I had this carburetor on the 2-liter in the buggy. It was one of the reasons why I kind of quit driving the buggy. Every time I would go into the grocery store, come back out and start it, it would cough and sputter and have to clean out because it was trashing that side. It was getting dripping fuel around those spark plugs and in those cylinders, and you know, that wasn't good. And I couldn't replace the carburetors, and because of the fiberglass on this car, I didn't want to have to cut it up to run the center mounts, and I wasn't sure whether I wanted to run these Cadrons on that 2-liter. I'm just not a big Cadron fan myself, although I can see the advantages of them. They're smaller and they take up less space and stuff. They're fine, they're okay, but when you've been used to port on port and how smooth they run when they do run good, I'm telling you, it'll spoil you. So what I did was I took the float, here's a float, and I just said, okay, let's just drop the float inside here and see how much that raises the fuel level. Well, these floats they're not like brass floats. You can't really shake them and hear the fuel in them. They got some sort of material in them, and they're supposed to be better than the brass. And so it seemed to float in there. I thought, well, must be okay, but I have nothing to compare it to. So I took a used float that I had saved. Years ago I had replaced the floats in something, and I kept one of the floats for some reason. Maybe one of them was bad, and I put it in there, and it seemed to set higher, be a little bit more lively, and I put it all together, and I hooked it up to the fuel line, just like you see this one on the floor, just like that I photographed at the beginning, and there was no fuel coming over. So, bad float. Maybe there's still something called the drip, and I don't have it. Maybe it has to get hot and heat travel up into it for it to expand. Maybe I do have it, maybe I don't. But from the cold here, it appears that I had a problem and I solved it. I know when I was in Oregon with this other pair, I had issues when I got there, and when I arrived home, I had more shit in an idle jet. Ugh. So, just one of the aggravations that you have to deal with when you get away from stock, and when you want a little bit more performance, and when you start adding all of this stuff on there, you've got more sources for problem. When it runs good, it's sweet. You just have a smile from ear to ear. But when it starts acting up, it can be more of an aggravation, especially when it's fuel issues. When you got one carburetor, you got less places to look for the problem, and those stock carburetors have to have bigger orifices in order to run all 4 cylinders, and they rarely get clogged up. If those things are clogging up, then you really got a problem. So, just information for those that like it. Alrighty, I don't know about you, but there's something gratifying about working on something, finishing it, and trying it out in the same day. If this works, I will sleep good tonight. I was busy while the camera was in the charger. I got the Dellortos on. Boy, that turned into be a hassle. Should have included that on the video, but I got so many Dellorto videos up. Now what I'm trying for, you know what? See where I screwed up here? You see it? I do. Right there. That's why I had trouble that second time. This one's on the inside, straight shot down. This one's on the outside. We ain't going anywhere till I get that squared away. That is just enough to change the geometry where these things won't be in sync. Alright, now I got it moved over on the left side, and look at the look how far it's off the stop. See that big space here? And the way you do that with CB Performance parts is they have left and right hand threads here. I have to loosen these up and then just screw them until they come together or go apart. Alright, everything is happy again. I am fresh out of love and patience. It's time to go for a putt. And I am done working on this thing. I'm hungry and I'm stiff. Whew, it's a lot easier working on an engine stand. That thing idles with one-on-one. Even makes the generator light. Now it's cold, so that's a little bit low on the RPM. Come on, baby. I know I got an emergency brake in there someplace. Let's check the oil pressure. Oh. It's cold too, so it'll probably be high. This dang oil pump, it was leaking right out of that screw. Boy, I had a devil of a time. I had to heat the aluminum with a torch to crack that thing. 25 pounds. I had a very low idle. But can you just hear the sound? How much smoother it is? Bad thing about that Stinger is if you do want to play, it's noisy. If there's a cop within 3 blocks, he's gonna know. And then when he sees it, he's gonna know. There's a cop. Not really, just kidding. Real crisp, right up to 5, and that's what that cam is good for, so no sense pushing it past that. I got single springs on it, and I'm running the stock aluminum push rods. You know the difference between those cadrons and port on port. Obviously, that's no secret. I hope I got that drip thing solved. I'm running too much fuel pressure. I should have about 3 pounds or less, but I've got a full 4, and that can make a difference too. Fuel pressure is very important on carburetors. You got to watch out when you switch to electric. Pretty soon this corn's going to be harvested. Looks pretty dry right now. Real dry, in fact. Okay, just come off the interstate. It's hot, oil pressure is about 10. Basically it runs about the same as it did going into Oregon. Even though I got the 40 by 35 heads and all the hullabaloo about whether or not to run heater boxes and the high temps. Let's check these head temperatures. Let's see here. 232. 290. 304. 284. 290. Well, it did cool off in the front. It used to run 269, 218. What the hell? 278. Interesting. sometimes too much information can drive your guy crazy. Just run it. That's what they used to tell me on the sand dunes. I was trying to get the thing perfect, and they're like, sit down, relax, just run it. Runs good. I think the next step is to put some ratio rockers on this puppy, and get the compression up to where it should be. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. TheEZGZ out.